this panel discussion. It's going to be expertly led by community champion Tracee Hutchison, award-winning broadcaster, writer, producer and environmental advocate whose 40-year career has shaped Australian media and amplified voices in music, environment and social justice. From Triple J to ABC, 3RRR, Green Music Australia and beyond, Tracee's story is one of purpose, power and impact. So please welcome Tracee, who will introduce the panel.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that beautiful, very generous introduction, and I'll pay whoever wrote it a little bit later on. Look, it's so lovely to be here, and I really feel like we have such an incredible creative community here on the Mornington Peninsula, a very diverse creative community, both in practice but also geographically. So it's wonderful to see so many folks here on this Monday night, and thanks also to beautiful Emily Jane for that gorgeous set. Just divine, thank you. And I think it's also really timely. I will introduce these incredible people who are on stage with us too in a minute, but I just want to really acknowledge and honour how timely it is that we've all turned up so powerfully in recent weeks as well at Council, and have let councillors know just how important it is that funding for the arts is a really essential part of who we are and telling our stories, and particularly funding creative practitioners is a really important part of how we hold a mirror up and celebrate who we are. So I know there's many of you in the room who have been with us over recent weeks, sending that message very clearly to councillors, and we have also been doing that in solidarity with our friends at Council who run the Incredible Arts and Culture team and do a whole lot of other stuff, and it's been a really tough time for those inside Council with those cuts to the arts environment programs and our First Nations friends as well. So I just want to acknowledge the Arts and Culture team who have put tonight on as well, and we really value what you do and we're proud to walk with you, so thank you so much. So tonight's event was originally framed as a Women's Day event in March, and it was originally scheduled for the long weekend. March the 8th falls on a long weekend, and everyone had so many other things to do that we felt it might be better to try and find another date later on in the year, which is what we found. So thanks to those who rescheduled and came tonight, and then other people who kind of come to this event off the back of it being beautifully advertised as well with some incredible people. But there is a thematic thread around gender and agency and curation in the conversation. So that's kind of framing a lot of what we'll talk about tonight. We do have some incredibly talented, wise and very accomplished creative professionals with us to share their experience and perspective on creativity, resilience and community impact, and there will also be time for some networking after we have our conversation. So if you've got a question, you can probably just buttonhole one of the panellists afterwards, and we'll just have a little chitty chat here and we'll leave enough time. So without further ado then, I'm really pleased to introduce our incredible panel. Dunja Rmandic is the director of the Mornington Peninsula Regional Gallery. I think I nailed it. Bringing expertise in visual arts and cultural leadership, brings extensive experience in curating contemporary art exhibitions. Dunja is passionate about fostering creative communities and supporting emerging and established artists, and I'm sure if you've been to the gallery you're familiar with Dunja and her work. Sitting next to Dunja is Kelly Nash, a dynamic, much-loved performer, or much-loved now, really, falling in a heap, haven't I? Everyone's much-loved, let's just take that as a given. With a rich history in theatre, television and comedy, from independent theatre to national telly, her flamboyant alter ego, Queenie Kent. There's been accolades in the British Web Awards and in classrooms.
Not Queenie.
No, not Queenie. And in classrooms, as a sexuality educator, which we will hear about as well. She wins hearts wherever she goes, including her star turn in the triumphant Seawolf's Howl. So welcome to Kelly. Holly Ryan is also with us, First Nations artist and graphic designer. Holly's work merges contemporary design with deep cultural heritage, and we'll have a deep dive into that tonight as well, inspired by her family's legacy in the AFL and her connection to Bunurong country. She uses art to educate, celebrate and preserve Indigenous culture, fostering healing and community connection. And beautiful Inanna Indigo right here next to me, also known as Indigo McKeon, Wotjobaluk artist from the Western Districts, the Wimmera, creative manager and front person of Inanna Indigo, formerly Indigo McKeon Music. Beautiful, tender blend of soul and jazz and folk, creating a form of solace and sacred space with the music for healing and sharing. And if you've heard Inanna perform, you will absolutely know that she does that with aplomb. So please make welcome our beautiful panellists. They're all fabulous. Yeah, they're all fabulous. So that's it. Thanks for coming. And let's see, coffee over there. No, we will have a bit of a chat. So, Dunja, I'm going to start with you. And I think, you know, anyone who chooses a creative path, you know, there are days where you really think, I really should have just worked in a bank. It's a tough career path. Tell us a little, though, of the spark that led you to your work now in you know, curatorial cultural leadership and sort of where you've landed. But what was that initial thing that kind of really inspired you to leap into the path that you've taken?
Thank you, Tracee. Hi, everyone. Just before I answer, I would like to acknowledge that I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we are meeting on and the land on which I live, the beautiful Bunurong country and the Bunurong people whose living culture continues, and may we honour it in our daily work. Also really privileged to be sitting here with all of you. That's a really good question, and I think one that I still hold very kind of dear and really kind of close to what I do in my daily work. And some of you may know, some of you may not know, English is my second language, and when I moved to New Zealand I didn't speak any English, and I learned English as an 11-year-old. And really being pulled away from my culture and my language into a context where I didn't speak the language was really difficult for me, and trying to re-establish my identity. And my mum would take me to exhibitions, and so I would see this incredible art, and I understood very quickly that I don't need language with visual art. And visual art communicates across different spheres and across different media and across kind of different experiences as well. And so for me, that entry into visual art and that kind of experience where I could be me even though I'm in a different country and a different language was really quite important. So that was really formative for me as a young person. And then when I was in year 11, we went to visit an exhibition. I was doing art and in high school, and we went to see this big exhibition. It was a big deal apparently, and we walked in and I was walking around, and it was one floor after another, after another, after another, and I said to my teacher, and there were all of these incredible works, videos, installation art, photography, and I didn't know any of the names, and I said to my teacher, sorry, miss, can you tell me who does this? Who does this? And she said, well, that's a curator. And I said, okay, great. Okay, cool. I think that's what I want to do. And she said, yep, okay, I can see that. And I said, and who curated this? And she said to me, Juliana Emberg. And of course, that was the one and only Biennale of Melbourne, Signs of Life, 1999. And for those of you who may know that show, that was an absolutely seminal show in the kind of history of contemporary Australian contemporary exhibitions in Melbourne at that time. And so that was really formative for me, that the fact that I was seeing Catherine Opie and amazing artists who I would have never encountered otherwise in that context. And he was this person who put all of this together, and he was a little me.
And that was the spark. We'll pick up on that. Do you know, I also need to acknowledge that Elisa Howard was supposed to be part of this panel tonight, and is a bit poorly in the tum-tum, and so she is not here, which is really best for all of us too, but awful for her. But not that she, anyway. No, anyway, it didn't come out. I'll just move on with questions. But just acknowledging she was supposed to be here and she's unwell. Which is a great shame, actually, because she is an incredible community artist, part of the extraordinary Hello Creatives Collective, and it's a big part of the Cook Street Collective, and beautiful work recently, Mother's Hands and other things. So we honour Elisa in her absence. Picking up from the visual art cue, I'm going to go to you, Holly, as a visual artist, and what was it for you that drew you to that form of storytelling, I guess, and perhaps drawing in on your own cultural heritage, First Nations heritage, to tell those stories? What was the spark?
I think that the spark really happened for me after I left high school, as a lot of mob have had experiences with high school kids weren't very nice to me and were very stereotypical about the colour of my skin, and I hid that part of me for a long time. I would show my artworks and my paintings to all my family members and really get creative behind closed doors, and then as soon as I left high school, my wonderful partner, he said to me, he goes, you could really make something out of this. I think you should really show this off to the world. And I did, and had no intentions of any achievement or any sort of, I was just so happy to start creating and start exploring that side of my identity. And then wonderful Elisa and Ro, they saw my artwork because they were both working and volunteering at the Oak Hill Gallery in Mornington, and I applied for a job there. I said, hey, do you guys have any work? I'd love to work in this gallery. I love the community aspect. And they said, well, actually, it's a not-for-profit, so you won't be getting paid here. But we have this thing going on where we're giving a room in our gallery to an artist. We're donating space to an artist for a week. Would you like to do it? And I said, yes, oh my God, this is the biggest thing that's ever happened to me. And so I did, and I did some live painting, and it was such a wonderful and eye-opening experience for me, and really solidified that this is what I want to start doing. I really think that I could change the community and change people's perspective on First Nations culture and really educate people in that way.
And we'll talk a little more about that as well, but you talk to the education piece, and that is such an important part of art and creative practice. Kelly, for you, as a theatre practitioner, performer, someone who tells story for a living through creative practice, but also is an educator, how did you find your way to life on the stage?
First child and first grandchild, so all I had to do was sit down and stand up. And I had them all in the palm of my hand, all the grown-ups in the room, and I went, I like this. That sense of just being adored. Am I wrong? I mean, it's a nice feeling, right? So I think it was that, but also it was undiagnosed ADHD. It was a lifetime of masking and sitting in classrooms, kind of going, listening face, and then someone would ask me a question, just like you did then, and I'd go, and I'd have to just come up with something really quickly. So, I think it was just a lifetime of living with a mask, and so it made sense to me to want to go into youth theatre, and so I did all of that sort of stuff. My mum was also a practitioner of various different streams. And I think that just, her going off to rehearsal was really standard when I was a kid. So I wanted to follow in her footsteps and do all those things. But she was also a radiographer, which is why when I said, I'm going to be an actor at the end of year 12 when we were filling in our forms, and I put in, VCA as my top choice and NIDA as my second. Bumped it down a little. And then Mum said, oh, for God's sakes, at least put down teaching. So that you've got something to fall back on, right? Like you, right? Am I right? And so I did. I got into Rusden through the back door. I got in through secretarial studies. I had never done anything. I'd never done anything before, but I didn't get in through drama because I hadn't really done that much before then. So I remember during the audition and going, they said, feel the space. And me wandering around the room going like this. When everybody else was sort of going like this. So I was out of my depth. Anyway, I snuck over and became a drama teacher, and now I don't teach drama, I teach sex ed, so yeah. And but I do incorporate a bit of performance in that.
Yes, you do.
That sounds really wrong.
And we will share some of those stories throughout the evening. Singing up stories is your chosen craft, Indigo, and it also is a deeply centred thing for you, ethos in your practice around healing and solace, and finding your core through music. What led that path for you, and how much cultural identity is part of wanting to sing up those stories?
Yeah, so I think my journey as a creative in the beginning was informed by confusion, I think, which is interesting. I didn't know it at the time, but as a young girl, I was undiagnosed ADHD, like so many of us in the creative industries. And I also am a First Nations person and come from a line of stolen generation family members. So when I was 9 years old, my great-grandma decided to just drop a bomb and go, we're Aboriginal and you've got to figure out what that means for our family. Didn't choose an adult, just chose the little 8-year-old. And so I was already a very introspective child, and I struggled to share that introspection, that I would sing to the birds and the trees. And at the time I didn't understand that I was just connecting with my country and with that part of how I feel the world. But it was just like, oh, if I go out to the trees and I start singing, whatever I'm feeling comes out, and it comes out in this way that I could have never written down or tried to explain to someone. It's just floating out of me, because there isn't that fear of judgment, I guess. And so I then just kept going in this wave of trying to understand my experiences and using music as the tool to really help figure them out and code them in adjectives. And I think there's also something really powerful about transmutation of these experiences. If we can take something that's hard, that makes us feel awful or broken, and we can turn that into something that's beautiful, then it's like, oh, that feels better.
You have each, in the descriptors of the moment or the path that you've taken into your creative practice, you've each talked at the core around identity, around finding yourself through art, having it either reflected back or finding a way to operate in the world without language. And I'm just going to come back to you, Holly, too, about that sense of identity and place. And it was a conversation that we had just before we came out, and I felt I was being respectful to ask you a cultural a cultural heritage question, where you might be from, and I I would ask if you might share your response again, because it goes to the heart of identity and finding your sense of self through your art.
Yeah, I think that when we were talking before, I spoke about how my family, we don't know what mob we're from. We have general ideas of area, but nothing's 100% because of things like the stolen generation and how so many Western documents that were needed to kind of show that we were Aboriginal and things like that, they were burnt. So that left a lot of disconnect for us. So I've really connected my identity. I've tried to start healing and reclaiming through my art and through connecting with community down here. I've lived on Bunurong country my whole life, and I'm really connected to water and really connected to the beach. Growing up, I lived in Safety Beach for a while, and in a lot of my art, it shows about different childhood memories, being at the beach with my mum and dad and skimming rocks on the water and things like that, and really being connected. And now that I've put myself out there with my art, I've really connected to local elders as well, who have given me so much guidance and encouragement and reassurance. So even though a big part of what I do is about self-advocating and connecting with country and my ancestors and my family and things like that, having that validation from people down here that say, you know what, you're loved, you're here, you're Aboriginal, you're one of us, and we're going to help you through it. It's really solidified my identity.
The visual mapping that art gives us and centres us and creates a world, which is the world that you move through with great employment and expertise, Dunja. When you began your sort of move into that world, what did it look like in a gendered lens? Where's the gender overlay? We've talked about this sense of agency through creative practice and the various people that have inspired that initial journey. But when we layer a gendered lens across that, you were very specific when you talked about some of the people that had inspired that early part of you, and they were women. Where does gender fit in for you in terms of, or does it? How much is there a gendered lens inform or impact the work that you do?
I would say hugely, because I went to study art history straight after high school, and when you study art history, you start with the Renaissance or thereabouts, and all the names that you read about are male names, and so really it wasn't until kind of halfway through my first year that I came across the first female name, Artemisia Gentileschi. And so, but even when you talk about, when people talk about her, they talk about her father and how she was his studio assistant. And so it's really interesting to sort of plot out the Western art history in particular in terms of this trajectory, and that trajectory is very much punctuated by male names. And even if, once you get to the 19th century, the women are models, and it's only recently that we've started. We know of the key names like Picasso and Pollock, and but we don't really know, and again, very recently started learning about the names that sat alongside them. So while we've got a lot of women working in the arts, and predominantly women work in the arts, what then tends to happen is the gallery directors and the executive tend to be men. And so after my undergrad, I did honours and I did masters. I did masters in curatorship, and in my master's class there were about 12 to 15 people doing the course at the time. Now there's 4 classes of 30. I don't know where they're going to end up with jobs, but that's okay. but there were 3 men, and I remember all 3 of them. One of them went overseas for about 3 months, came back and got a director's job in a regional New South Wales gallery, just like that. Another one got a job at the NGV and now is running Geelong Gallery, Humphrey. He is amazing, but you know, his trajectory again was very kind of direct. And another guy got a job at a public gallery, whereas all the women that I studied with did a lot of volunteering. We went into artist-run spaces, we did all sorts of things, sometimes did 3 or 4 things at the same time. And so, you know, that when we talk about the arts being the visual arts, having a lot of female workers, we do, because we have a lot of skills that we have gathered over the years.
And how has that gendered lens, how does that inform your curatorial decision making? Does it?
I don't think it does explicitly, but I think my general approach has always been, because of where I've come from and how I've experienced the world, has been to be very open and not very categorical in my decision making. I'm very I like to invite the world, and I like to invite the conversation and sit within that conversation. So that's my general approach, and I think that is something too that has been called a feminist approach, which the first time that I kind of heard it sort of took me by surprise. And I've never really thought myself as a explicit feminist, but I guess, you know, I am in my work and my methodology. So that's kind of interesting, you know, when there are categories that you sort of have to work for or against or with, you know, those are really interesting spaces for me as well. And that kind of open way of inviting those conversations, I guess, is it's really difficult, and it takes time and it takes a lot of energy. And somehow we still create space for it because it's important. But I think, you know, I mean, I've certainly sat in rooms where, you know, or meetings where, you know, an amazing curator, female curator would have a great idea, and then male curator would restate the same idea, and the director would be like, oh my God, that's amazing, we're going to do that. And I would go, hang on a second, I've just watched this, you know, extremely experienced woman who has all the knowledge, just, you know, floor everyone with her amazing idea and it be completely silent in the light of this room.
Yes, and the kind of collective, I think we've all been in those rooms. We've all been in those moments. Kel, give us a sense of the gendered lens in the world of performing, and I guess the things you've observed in the way perhaps women may be viewed through that lens of gender, if you would.
I think for me, I remember doing a theatre class back when I was about 16, and it was like a 4-week arrangement where you'd turn up and work with other people, and it was all pretty much all female, apart from one male. And the guy who ran it pretty much said, look around the room, you're all around the same age, you look at your competition. And I kind of went, oh my God, there's a lot of women in this room and only one bloke. And then the teacher went on to say, and get used to this, there's more parts for men. Like, just back in the day, this is going back a long time, quite long. So this is probably going back to the really early 80s, when men were driving a lot of the, you know, production houses, and so the big roles were going to them. I think things have changed a lot, and that people are starting to go, you know what, if I can't make it in mainstream, and I can't speak about mainstream because that hasn't been my experience, but I can speak on behalf of people who I just go, yeah, all right, well, if there's no work out there for us, or, you know, I'm not pretty enough. Oh, that's the other thing that happened to me. When I first got an agent, now it's coming back, you've dropped something here.
Did you mention the ADHD? No, go on.
I had an agent he was my first agent, and he said, you'll have to lose weight, because you'll never get a role. And he was kind of right. But I couldn't be bothered losing weight. Also, it turns out chewing is something that makes you feel calmer.
But also the other thing that you have, I guess there would be many people here who may have seen you on the telly over the years or on other stages, but many of us also were introduced to you through the incredible, empowered, triumphant Seawolf's Howl. And a shout out to Claire Thorne, who's here, who commissioned that work at Flinders Fringe. But that idea that, you know, the power of art in particular to reflect those stories and celebrate those stories, and in many ways that particular art form, that theatre piece, was just the most sublimely perfect way to bring that story to life of the women who swim at Mount Martha and got together through COVID and gender diverse folk who were swimming as well, me. But I guess that role of art to, you know, hold up those stories and tell those stories is something that, you know, you've also been very passionate about in your career.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and what a treat it was to be able to tell the story of the Seawolves. And I don't want to boast too much, but we've just been, you know, huge at Showcase, which is I'm not going to go.
And Showcase is, like now that you've said Showcase, what's Showcase?
Showcase is a Regional Arts Victoria. It's essentially an opportunity to go and show your wares to a group of people who are going to maybe book you, and we've already got bookings for next year. So it's like but on the back of telling this beautiful story and written by another local fabulous creative, Carol Wotjobaluk, and Jane Bailey and John Thorne, who wrote the music. Like, how lucky are we to have this just energy on tap to be able to go, yeah, let's make this into a beautiful story that will have a profound effect on people. Honestly, afterwards, when people saw that show, they were weeping and hurraying. Is there another way of saying that? Cheering, and like it tapped into so many emotions. It was such a privilege to be able to do that show. And I think actually that is a big part of my work. Anything that I do, I really like to know that it's not just selling a fluffy, although I do like selling a fluffy, but there's a deeper meaning. So I do a lot of work around body image, and I'll use performance in that, and even in sexuality education. Yeah,
we still haven't got to that, but we will.
It's intriguing, isn't it?
It is. It's worth the wait.
Hold that thought.
Very proud bum moment for Claire Thorne. The passing on of stories, the handing down of stories through art is also intrinsic to First Nations cultures as well. And it's something, Holly, that we're both doing, but I'll go to you first, Holly. That power of, the giving voice to those stories, but the underrepresented stories, which is what you've also managed to embody with your art. Can you talk a little to the way, that matrilineal structure within First Nations communities and the way you're carrying that through with your work?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty recent that my eyes have kind of been opened up to it. So I've been really showcasing, and I wouldn't say doing this professionally, but for about 2.5 years now. And a lot of that's been about self-advocacy, because my mum's side of the family is where I get my Aboriginal blood from, and there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of family trauma. There's a lot of information being withheld because people feel too uncomfortable to share our stories and where we come from, because so much trauma happened to my great-grandpa. And through doing my art and sharing my own stories of simple things like my childhood, like I was talking about before, or just emotions that I have, like a lot of the stuff I do, I paint about my mum. So my mum passed away in 2013 from cancer, and a lot of the stuff I do when I started was definitely for her, because she didn't get to explore, she didn't have this platform. No one in my family really had the platform that I do now. And really recently I've seen that my family, they're starting to open up. For example, I did a collaboration with Sports Girl. They got 4 First Nations artists who have lived experience with mental health and trauma and things like that to come and help them design their charity tote bags. And obviously that's actually the biggest thing I think I've ever done and will ever do. I'm so grateful for that opportunity. The first time I showed my grandma's not Aboriginal, it's my grandpa, but she knows everything. And the first time I showed her and I brought her a bag, she just looked at me and she goes, "Your grandpa would be so proud of you right now. He couldn't do this, so I'm so glad that you are making waves for him." And for the next, I reckon, 2 hours, I didn't even sit on a chair, I sat on the floor right in front of her and she was just telling me absolutely everything that happened to him and everything that happened to his dad and where we are now and what we know and everything. So it really just, it's got to start somewhere. The healing's got to start somewhere, and although it took guts, I'll say that, it took guts to get past the initial nerves and trauma, and I felt so uncomfortable for so long, but to have my own family starting to open up because of, not to toot my own horn, but because of me, it's so special. It's so special, and I'm so happy to have that experience.
And also because you are telling those stories, those storylines, the songlines through the work. There's an AFL jumper too, isn't there? Do you want to quickly tell, isn't there?
There's not an AFL jumper for me.
I thought there was.
No, there's not, but when I first started out, I had my passion and my goal was I wanted to make it to the AFL because, so my great-grandfather, his name was Joe Johnson, he's recognised as the first Aboriginal man to play AFL, what it was called VFL at the time, and my grandpa also played for North Melbourne in the 50s alongside the likes of Ron Barassi and things like that, and I had this goal that I wanted to design the North Melbourne jumper.
For the Dreamtime round?
Yes, for the Dreamtime round. Yeah. And that was my first initial goal, and now that I've been doing this for a while, I think that my goal now is to have my great-grandfather have more recognition. Because I can't remember what year it was, maybe it was 2002, Dad, nod at me if it's right, what year was it? 2000? Yeah, I know. They did the AFL Indigenous Team of the Century, and obviously my great-grandfather was recognised as the first Aboriginal man to play, and my family was invited. But that's it since then, and not a lot of people know. Of course, pretty much all mob know who Joe Johnson is, but I would really like to get his name out more, and I would really like there to be some sort of recognition. So that's what I'm working towards at the moment.
Well, there's plenty more Dreamtime games ahead, and plenty of opportunities to design the North Melbourne footy jumper. So we will all watch with interest at that point where it happens, and we can all go see. She did it. Indigo. Forming a community practice, having that sense of people around you to support your work, and everyone has sort of talked about that in their own way. You are also part of a very, very tight, beautiful community practice with your music. How important has that been for you to have that sense of being part of a creative community, to support what it is that you're wanting to do, your aspirations with your music?
Oh, hugely. I mean, it's kind of the core of making it happen, I think, is the people around me. I had it was like 4 years ago, I was playing with a completely different band, and it was almost like this crumbling of everything around me, because at that stage of my creative practice, I wasn't comfortable in being fully honest about who I was and my stories and what I cared about. And when I started feeling comfortable to share these things, it was a crumbling of like, oh no, but you just kind of would just sit there quiet and agree with everything and do whatever you could to kind of fly under the radar. And when that shift happened, it was quite isolating. And then it was this beautiful filling up of people who really saw me. And so what I was trying to do, and especially I got funding from the council, so privileged to make an album about my experience of...
From the Performing Arts Development Grant?
I know, we need to reinstate it, oh my gosh! Yeah, so I got the Performing Arts Development Fund, and I was able to create a body of work that told my story of healing from sexual violence and that of my ancestors. Unfortunately, it's been every single generation since colonisation that's had the experience of the women in my family, and I'm the first one that's got to speak about it. And that's, a credit to my family and my community and the team around me, because I didn't feel strong when I started the project. I needed people who would see that I was trying to do something bigger than me and would hold me in it.
Thank you for talking to that. I think any creative pursuit requires enormous resilience and dexterity, and we've talked about the shiny side in many ways of what the creative practice actually delivers us, and that incredible calling to do the work and be part of that creative practice. But it's tough, right? And wonderful that you were a recipient of the Performing Arts Development Grant to enable you to record that music. But I think I was reading recently that the average income of a musician in Australia is around $6,000. So can't survive on that. So, weighing up, that ability to bring your gift to the world, to sing up those songs, to sing up the stories of the women in your family as you talk about, with the fiscal reality of, surprise, surprise, we don't live on air. How do you, that's a big tension point for creatives. How do you make that work for you?
So for a while I really didn't, and I was performing full-time and pretending that I didn't have a menstrual cycle and I didn't have need for rest, and I could operate in a way that would make me ill. And kind of when COVID happened, that was obviously stopped, and the focus got put on my health, and the question became, how can I keep doing what I love while also paying the bills and also not being in chronic pain? Because it's like you can love your art to that point of like making yourself ill. And so I started doing teaching, and for a while I really kind of didn't become a music teacher because of the rhetoric in my uni of like, yeah, so many failed musicians make great teachers sort of thing. And so I guess I had this like not correct self-belief that if I diversified what I was doing in order to be holistically happy and healthy rather than just putting all of my importance and self-identity on what I was creating, then I could find that balance. And I still do gardening jobs, do little, I used to think that success meant just performing all the time, but now it's very different. It means feeling sustained and healthy, and that I can connect in other ways and still share art and music in those spaces, but performing full time I couldn't do it physically.
Kelly, the sexuality educator on the panel. Yeah, we got it. 7 minutes to go.
7 minutes to go.
Yeah. Well, you've not got 7 minutes to talk about it, but. the weighing up, you know, that constant juggle between
To art or to earn.
Yeah, that's right. To art or to earn.
Yeah. Or do you do a bit of both?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it turns out Mumsy was right. The BN has come in very handy over the years, and I have fallen back on a number of occasions. Yeah. In 2011, because I used to be a drama teacher, but then I had my daughter. We moved down here. Everything kind of changed a bit, and I was looking for some work, and I got some work teaching sex ed, and that all kind of fell apart in about 2017 when the little group that I was working for died, and a number of local schools contacted me. They don't exist anymore.
Oh,
yeah,
they just dissipated.
Yeah, dissipated. Yeah, sorry. I just assume everyone knows what I'm talking about. It's like it's like you're in here with me.
Keep going.
Anyway. So the point is, so I've been doing this for a long time, and in 2018 I started my own business. So what's great about that is I can say yes or no to things depending on how much work comes up, or if I get a gig like doing a commercial, which is worth a bomb, I can go ring a school and go, can I come on a different day? Because on that day, I can go and swing a golf club badly and make a few $1,000s. So, and usually they're pretty amenable, which is great, because then they get to go, oh, you're on the telly, playing golf badly. But yes, I do try and bring a bit of performance into my day-to-day stuff, otherwise I get bored, honestly. There's only so long you can talk about periods and wet dreams before you start to go, seriously, can I make this a bit more fun? So I'm saying backstage to Tracee, I try and make it a bit fun. So, for example, today we were talking about erections. And so when I was talking about erections, you know what they are? I'll tell you. So I said,
how old are the children? How old are the young people?
Oh, they're little. They're not little. They're like year 5, year 6. We're talking puberty, random erections, that sort of thing, so that kids have a better idea of what's going on in their bodies. Anyway, so we talk about different reasons that people can get erections. I say to the kids, you might know this by a different name, but erectionitis is where the penis becomes quite hard and will sit up and away from the body. And then I give it a beat just long enough for them to go, did she say what? Just think. And I go, yeah, when I say away, it's still attached. You don't come back here! And that's usually the reaction that we get. And that's really nice because it takes that awkwardness away. So again, it comes back to the fact that, using your art for good instead of evil can be, what an awesome thing to be able to do,
Yeah. And there is absolutely no way I can seg from that to either of the other two.
I'm not beating that.
In any other way, so I'm just going to put a line through that. But mostly because it's about the constant juggle. What you're talking about is that constant juggle in the making the living and the art or what did you say?
To art or to earn.
Yeah.
I think I got that from Julia Cameron.
It's really good.
The artist's way.
I'm really liking that.
Yeah.
Dunja, for you, as I feel like you're the serious grown-up on the panel in terms of the person with the paid gig, and the rest of us are just sort of trying to still magic up a living. The sort of the getting the sort of into that world of curation and curatorial leadership and cultural leadership. I think from the outside it probably looks like, oh wow, she's got such a good job. What's it like on the inside? That sort of that the stress of that and the what are the sorts of juggles that you go through in terms of keeping that kind of true to who you are as well?
I think at one point I had 2 part-time jobs and I was working on 3 projects and volunteering as well. So, that's the kind of reality. I mentioned at the beginning, like that, there was a whole suite of people when you go to uni and you get all of that academic knowledge and that's all really great and you get to meet like-minded people and then the reality hits and you're basically volunteering on boards and volunteering a lot and doing freelance projects and you're not paid until the project ends and you still, it's just basically just used to be peanuts, but now we've got NAWA that has some guidelines around how people are paid, which is really amazing. So, those things really take time and they're really important. Superannuation was not a thing that I started being paid until, a few years ago, but really for a really long time I didn't even know what superannuation was. So I think, you know, we really sort of, it's really hard work, you know, and when you get to a certain point, you don't forget that. You never forget that. You never forget that hard work. You never forget when someone walks through the door at MPRG, for example, young people walk in and want to volunteer with us, you know, I never take that for granted, because that's how I started. And that's where I learned a lot in various different ways. So I think it's, you know, you kind of get to this point and you think, well, you know, it's only up from here. But really, like, it's really hard work, and it's really emotional work. And, you know, like you were saying, like, sorry, maybe this is too much information, but I'm just going to say it. I didn't, like, really realise what, like, you know, obviously I get my period every month, but I didn't really realise what that meant, you know. So I would get really excited about projects, and for, you know, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, I would just like do all the things and say yes and like book my, you know, my schedule, and then I'd be like, oh, maybe I don't want to be in the arts. Oh, this is so hard. Oh, maybe this is not what I want to do. Maybe I want to be a lawyer. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. You know? Do you know? And then I kind of go, well, no one cares what I have to say, and I don't want to get out of bed, and all those things, you know. And then it all ends, and you're like, oh my god, what the hell was I even thinking about? So it's you know, and I'm so ashamed to say, quite old when I realised this, you know, because no one spoke to me about these things, you know. I mean, I know you're kind of joking about sex ed, but it's really important for young people to know and to understand. That's right, like to know their bodies and to know how they come into the world and how they kind of approach daily work, you know, and that's actually power.
Right.
Yeah. And I learned something from them. I think when conversations generate really amazing ideas and a sense of community, you mentioned that quite a few times, that is strength. So I guess success for me looks like when I feel like the community and the people that I interact with gather strength from the work that I help do. And I'm not just one person doing the work. You know, there's always a team. Sometimes in the visual arts we feel like we have to have just the individual that does the work. But you know, you in the performing arts world know that that's never the case. And so I think that, you know, for me that's really amazing that actually we always exist in the community.
That's not very
That was a mic drop moment.
Yeah, we always exist in a community, and you know, there's a deep strength that actually holds us together. And I think when we really interrogate what our world is, that's where I think we are the strongest. You know, when we don't shy away from difficult conversations and we enter those difficult conversations with an open heart and an open mind and want to know how we can be better, not just for ourselves but as a community as well.
And beautiful, and I think that's why we turn to art. You know, that's why the power of art is it's why we're here. It's why we're having these conversations. Why we continue, I guess, individually with creative practice and through a curatorial lens as well. Holly, for you, when you think about that self-reflection around impact and success, you know, what is it for you that makes you think that that's my definition of success or impact? How does that sit for you?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely changed over the past 3 years. I think the first time with my designs, because I also studied graphic design at university, it was in year 12. Everyone does in BizCom design in that class. Everyone does a project for the entire year, and I made a winery that was called Ghana Estate, which paid homage to the Ghana people, we had to create this whole entire concept, and I embedded native foods of the area into the menu and things like that, and it got chosen to be exhibited at the Regional Gallery for, what's it called? I can't remember, New Wave or something like that, where Year 12 students from the past year. They all get to exhibit, and I saw that it made an impact on my classmates because they really just didn't. They hadn't ever interacted with something like that before, and in my folio I had pictures of my artwork and trials and things like that, and they were asking me questions about it, and I just couldn't believe, like, people my age, they were so interested. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And then when I got out of school and I started painting for the world to see, I got lost a bit. I kind of I measured my own success not based off money. It was never about money, but it was, I don't know how to explain it, maybe about popularity. I saw all of my favourite artists, and I was speaking to all of my favourite artists, and they were getting these massive collaborations, and they were all working full-time doing their art, and they all had all these amazing things, and I was like, wow, that's what I need to do. So I marketed myself in a similar way, and I worked for about a year, and then I hit a big roadblock, a big one, and I got very, very stuck. So I stopped painting for a fair few months, and I got in contact with the Land Council, the Bunnan Land Council, and a local elder there that I had previously spoken to, and I said to him, I don't know where to go from here. I don't know what to do. I'm feeling really insecure and not valid. I don't know where to go from here. And the first thing he said was, first off, you're awesome. What you're doing is so amazing, and you're really the representation that people your age need. And we spoke on the phone for about like an hour. We were just yarning about absolutely nothing. But anyway, and then even that time of the conversation, it really grounded me and made me rethink how I view my own success. And it's really, I think about it, it's really been the same all along. I want to have impact in primary schools. I think about the fact that, alongside apparently everyone, I also want to do teaching to fall back on. But I think about, I paint murals in primary schools, and that is the highlight of this creative job, is painting a mural and having a kid come up to me, whether it's 1 or whether it's 5, and they may be asking me if I listen to Taylor Swift, but most of the time they're asking me about the symbols, and they're asking me about my family, or another Indigenous student will come up to me and goes, I'm Aboriginal too, and that is what I want my impact to be. I want other Indigenous kids to feel seen, even in a community that is not, and previously was not very welcoming. When I was their age, I never felt confident enough to speak up about it, and when I would, like I previously said, I'd get made fun of. So making it a more safe space for Indigenous kids through my art, but inevitably through my presence and my identity, that's what I view my success as now.
Wow, that's a pretty clear vision. Fantastic. Indigo, for you, the music community is a very, on one level, incredibly beautiful and very supportive, and on a whole lot of other levels, it's probably one of the most brutal. I have had some close-up view of that over many decades. It's a pretty brutal industry to survive and make something that might resemble a living wage. How do you measure for you that tension point between impact and success, and also I guess the resilience to keep going? You know, what is it that you're seeing when you think, I'm going to keep doing this?
Yes, I think it's changed over the time for sure. Just as Holly said, it's kind of like, I think for a while my ego was a little bit tied up in it, that I felt like I wanted to be viewed in this way and perceived in this way, and it didn't make me feel good. And then especially when I started working with children and just being like, okay, what if I show up as exactly me in all of my vulnerable parts, all the parts that I want to not allow to be seen, and filter that into my work and my teaching. And it creates this openness, because they can see like, oh my gosh, you're a silly weirdo like me. Like, I can be a silly weirdo in this space. And as far as like finding the ways to like, you know, honour that craving of wanting to be in those spaces and have enough money for rent, I think like the biggest pivot for me was realising I couldn't do everything I wanted to do by myself. It's in the last couple of weeks I've been in working out details, but I am moving my teaching practice to the Revillaging Project, because what they've created this village, right? And it's like they have teaching programs, they have weaving, they have cultural programs, they have live music, they have permaculture gardens. And I think for me, I realised if I want to grow my music, like my teaching space, I realistically can't afford to pay another rent on top of my house. So I'm going to offer my time and my energy. And so I'm going to help them get more live music in their space. They're going to give me a space to teach. And I think that like leaning into, you know, non-monetary exchanges to help you stay afloat. I help in their garden and I get all my organic food. Like I think that's important in it, is if you want to live this like alternative life, I guess, is like being okay with leaning into like how far can I lean
Until you.
Yeah, exactly. And see where the balance needs to be had. But I personally love exchanges, and they're a really big part of how I make it work.
You mentioned the ego, and that was a challenging navigation for you. The performative self and the self are two very different entities, and it's often something that, particularly as performers, we have one version of ourselves, and then we have the other version of ourselves. Kelly, can you talk a little bit about, and we're kind of almost wrapping now, but just that sense of that juggle between, you know, the performer, the performative self who goes out and earns the living, and then the self who's just going, just got to still work, have to pay the rent. For you, you know, that juggle, that tension point between surviving financially, being who you are, honouring your performer self. What does that look like for you, you know, in terms of the impact versus success and that resilience to keep going?
It's really hard to speak after three other women who've spoken so insightfully and eruditely, but particularly you young ones. Oh my God. I was an idiot when I was your age. Seriously, I was just like, you know what my vision of success would have been at your age? To be a famous movie star. Well, if I'm still using that metric, I have not succeeded. But have I had impact? Yes, I have. And I think part of that has come through that tension of working in schools and of working for myself, because I bring that performative energy to the schoolwork. And some of the stuff that I do, which is actually the song I'm going to do at the end, is about body image. So I talk to young women about feeling good in a body when we get, you know, 10,000 images a day thrown at us telling us that we're not good enough. And so just knowing that I'm using, again, it's pretty basic, but just knowing that I'm having some kind of impact on young people. And sometimes it's immediate, and other times it might be a person coming up to you in the street and going, when you sang that really ridiculous song about people being different sizes and making it okay, that made me feel really good about myself. Something really simple like that. So, yeah. But as far as the money goes, it's just a constant struggle. I'll never sort it out. I've just come off 3 weeks of doing a profit share show, and you know, I've been schlepping up and down to Brunswick to do rehearsals, into 45 downstairs, which is in the city, so you've got you're paying for parking and petrol. It's probably cost me $1,000 to do the show. I'll probably make 300. So, but I loved it. I had a lovely time. I was doing an Irish accent, and so I've had 3 weeks of doing that. So that was fulfilling for me, but it's cost me.
Yeah. I'm just going to give the last word to Dunja.
I think that's wise.
Yeah.
That's quite enjoying this.
Well, I mean, you were talking about, as you were telling me about the erection story, you told me that you were spent the last 3 weeks with an Irish accent riding a horse, I thought, was it?
Riding man.
Oh, man, riding a man.
And just everything I say sounds so wrong. He was on all fours, like it was not.
No. Anyway, moving along.
This is the late
So interesting that we've had, the 3 perspectives of the practitioner, but you're a practitioner too in your curatorial work, and I guess it also that role of organisations and institutions and entities to really uplift women. What would you? How would you sort of characterise that? Can you leave us with some sort of really inspiring sort of... What institutions are so favourable to women, especially ones who like to speak up? But, Dunja, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks, Tracee. Look, I mean, I know you just joked about that, but I think we do need to take those opportunities, and I think we need to not stop trying to get into institutions. And I think, as you mentioned, things are a lot easier. They're certainly easier in the time that I've worked over the last 20 years, much easier. So I think we need to take those moments and we really need to run with them. One thing that I don't like to take for granted is anything, really. And so I think, sure, you get to a certain point and you're doing a certain thing, but that may shift in any way, in any direction. And I think the moments that we have, we need to really, oh my God, I'm going to sound like a cliche, seize them. But I think we really do, and I think because things are changing all the time, and things are changing in our kind of in our home environment, but also in our workplaces and in our cities and in our countries and internationally and globally. We are facing a climate catastrophe. Things that we're enjoying now, your kids and your grandkids may not be able to see and enjoy the same way. So I think we need to be always aware that we need to take all of these opportunities as they come and not be afraid. And I think, even though that's really hard, and it still is the case that, women do think about how they are seen. And I don't mean in terms of a body type, but certainly in the kind of professional context. When you speak up and you're really thinking constantly how you speak and what you say and the tone and things that, I'm sorry to the men in this room, but you don't necessarily need to think about that, you just do it. And so, we still kind of need to think about those things. But I don't think we need to be afraid. I don't think anyone needs to be afraid of anything. I think if we are afraid, that's when we're really vulnerable. I think when we decide not to be fearful and not to be afraid, that's where our strength really lies.
What a beautiful way to finish. Please we could just keep going, just beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for your generosity. There will be time for more snacks and a bit of chitty chat. But I think Kelly is going to perform for us.
I believe so. Where's my roadie?
Yeah.
And look, I was going to do this on the microphone. We're going to do it sitting down, Trevor. Is that all right?
Should we
I'm going to defy convention. Stay if you want. I don't mind. Can I just say, Tracee, thank you for your awesome questions. And for uncovering some deep wounds. I'm going to go and sort some stuff out.
We might give Kelly the floor. I think she exit. And thank you all for sticking with her. Beautiful chat.
Good, because that will free up a chair. Because guess what I forgot? My music's now.
Do you want me to hold it?
Oh no, I'll just put it on a chair. You've done that, didn't you? So let's put that here. So I said before that I... I only ADHD. Who said that? So I do some shows for young people around body image, but I also, can you hear me? Yes. Good. But I also do some stuff for older women as well, and part of what I talk about is how when I'm 96 years old and I'm lying on my deathbed, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be lying there going like this. I only have, why do old people do that? Is that tensions? I only have one regret, and that is that I was not 1.5 kilograms lighter for Auntie Freddie's wedding. That's been long. I mean, if that's all my life amounted to, what a shame. So I say to these people, then, you know, when I'm 96 years old, this is what I'm going to be doing, right? So I'm still old. I don't know what to do about that. And even if I've had a piece of plastic surgery, I'm still wow! 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 Cause of death saying, wow. I want to celebrate this funny, daggy old body that was genetically gifted to me, and I've done some other stuff to it along the way, that has taken me from cradle to grave. I want to celebrate these chunky legs that have walked me up down the sides. I want to celebrate these arms that by then I'll be going like this. Whoa! Check this out, family. Whoa! Whoa! Cause of death, suffocation by own arm fat. I want to celebrate these eyes that got to take in beautiful sights every day that are hanging down here now. I want to celebrate this tummy that moved all the way out to here to house a small child and then came all the way back in again. I say all the way. Quite all the way. Anyway, and I finished with a little song about ageing gracefully. And this is it. I haven't sung it for a while, 15 years. It is with deep apologies to Katie Tunstall and her beautiful song, Suddenly I See, that I will attempt this. Oh, someone's going to walk down memory lane. It's a nice song. I think it's in the wrong key, but we'll soon find out. My face is like a map of the world, it's like a map of the world. You can see I've been a beautiful girl, I was a beautiful girl. But now everything below my neck collects around my knees. There's a vast expanse of flat skin where my nipples used to be. It's a tragedy. And when I laugh, I do a bit of wheeze. Aging gracefully. Oh, that got high. It's not what I want for me, aging gracefully. I want the whole wide world to see the very fine work I've had with Botox and surgeries. Dr. Wright is a whiz with the knife, he's a whiz with the knife. He's had a lot of practice on his wife. It's a scalpel, not a knife. She's had everything augmented, a complete aging bypass. And now her face is tighter than a barramundi's ass, and it leaves no scars. And I'm only whinging cause I'm envious. It's a rough rhyme. Aging gracefully. It's not what I want for me, aging gracefully. I want the whole wide world to see the very fine work I've had with Botox and surgery. Some injectables and liquid rhinoplasty, it's a thing, look it up. Microdermabrasion and a Brazilian butt lift to defy gravity. Vampire facials and my own bum fat put back into me, but not there. Perhaps I should get over it all and have a cup of tea. Black with a slice of lemon, that's how old people